G'day everybody, my name is Katy McCallum and I represent the Kilkivan Action Group. I'm pretty sure you all know where Kilkivan is. If you don't, then you really need to move to Victoria. So I'm sure they want those sorts of people down there. So I live on the Black Snake Range. I'm not sure if you all know where that is. That's that big mountain range. It's the far western mountain range you can see when you drive through Gympie. And I also own and run that little store in Kilkivan where you get the yummy toasted sangers. So I never chose to be here today. This isn't something that I wanted to do. My mate here, Jim Wilmot, he's from Property Rights Australia. We sort of fell into this gig over the last year and a half, I guess, when this whole big renewable energy bulldozer that's about to cream the entire east coast of Australia came to Kilkivan. We didn't know anything about it. And suddenly we find out that this Queensland government-owned corporation Powerlinks decided that it wants to stick a giant 500 kVA transmission line through our town and out the other side to the solar panels. So that's when I finally woke up to what was going on. So just to give you a quick bit of background so you don't think I'm just some crazy woman from the mountains who's just here rambling on. I was in the police service. I was a serving police officer here in Queensland for over 16 years. Thank you. I didn't serve in the city, I served in the country. So I went straight to Mount Isa. I've worked everywhere from Birdsville to Mornington Island, all the way, worked my way back down and got back to Mergen. And then I left the police just over 6 years ago when my husband and I, he was a police officer as well, we bought the local shop in the Servo in Kilkivan. Thought we'd get a better life than shift work and, you know, all that stuff police have to deal with. So I do know a little bit about the law, just a little bit. It was my bread and butter. I was only ever a general duties cop, so all I did was drive around a police car all day long doing general duties work. I didn't get myself into an office job and I certainly wasn't some high-ranked ladder climber. So I had some people rock on into the shop one morning in Kilkivan telling me about these power lines, and that's when I said, well, just hold on 1 minute. When did the government decide that they're going to come and take people's properties and easements over their properties and put in giant power lines without our permission? And I thought I knew a bit about the law, or the state law. Well, apparently I didn't, because I didn't know that the Acquisition of Land Act existed. Does anybody here know about the Acquisition of Land Act and all of the sections in it? Yep, so there's a few hands. You should go home and read it, because when you see the powers that the Queensland government has to take your land if they wish to do so, it's very, very scary. So we were hit straight up with this concept that Powerlink was going to come and they were going to start trying to gain entry into people's properties. And that's when I came up with the idea, well, they can gain access to our properties via permission if we give it to them, but if we lock our gates, nobody's allowed to come in. In fact, you don't even need to lock your gate in Queensland. Nobody is allowed to come onto your private property without your permission or authority. And if they do, other than under the common law, like a girl guide or somebody coming to knock on your front door, if they do come onto your property, they've committed the offence of trespass under the Summary Offences Act. So we linked these things up and we found that the only way Powerlink could get onto our property was if they trespassed or if you gave them permission. So I'm not sure if any of you have seen, we've got all these big signs hanging along the highway all over the place that our gates are locked. And that was our plan to start off with, to delay the plan for as long as we can. So I'm not an expert on what you guys are facing here, but what I'm an expert on is what we've been through for the last year and a half over there and what we've been dealing with in the Queensland government. And what it did is it led to Jim and I joining up with another group called the National Rational Energy Network. I ended up speaking down at Parliament House in Brisbane at a rally, then down at Sydney, and then we ended up in Canberra in February this year. Did anybody here go to the Reckless Renewables rally in Canberra? Did anybody see it on the news? Oh yeah, cool. There's a couple of people. So let me play you a little tiny clip from that just so you've got some idea about how angry Jim and I can get about this subject. I didn't think I was an angry person until I was faced with the prospect of the government stealing things from my community. So we stood up at the very front of Parliament House with the big flag and called out the politicians. I was a bit worried. There was more cops there than anybody else. I thought we were going to get locked up. If you go to ADH TV with Nick Cater, he's got a show called Reality Bites. And the very first edition of that this year was the Reckless Renewables Rally in Canberra.
Now, there's a couple of blokes back here in this big building called Blackout Bowen and Airbus Elbow. And there's another couple of blokes up in Queensland called Stephen Miles and Mick DeBrenny. And those four fellas, well, they didn't even bother to ask the people, the plants or the animals where I come from, whether they've got the economic, the environmental or the social licence to roll the reckless renewables out over our homes. So I'm here with the message for DeBrenny and for Miles and Blackout and Airbus. No deal. No deal. Pack up your bulldozers and your drilling rigs and take them away, because up in Kilkivan our gates are locked. You are not welcome on our land. Our gates are locked. You are not welcome. Thank you for everybody being here today. It is bloody brilliant to see you all here. Let's do it again.
Jim nearly let out a few obscene words, but he decided to convert them over to the word frigging, thank goodness, so he didn't get us locked up. But we all got very angry, and that day was a very big eye-opener to me, to the fact that down there in Canberra, where all of our money ends up, and I remind my staff of that every day when they're at work. At the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, so you did 11 hours today? Well, just remember, you just gave a third of that to the tax man. And when you go down there and you realise that the majority of the politicians and the bureaucrats, and there is a lot of them, they live in a test tube. They could not care less about what happens to us. They are so worried about making meetings for meetings for meetings for meetings and drinking more coffees and more lattes and introducing each other and networking. They couldn't give two shits about what goes on out in these places out here where the rest of the Australians live. And I got to see that when I sat down with David Pocock's offside, one of his personal advisors. He sat at a table with myself and Glenda Pickersgill. Some of you might know her. She's on the Save the Mary coordinating group. And we gave him this lovely glossy book, beautiful book, two of them actually, showing what the top of the Mary River looks like, Yabba Creek, all of the area that's under threat by Barumba. And we explained to him why we're here in Canberra, why we're asking for a Senate inquiry. And he sort of sat there listening. And then he stared across the table at me, straight into my eyes and said, "The Senator finds it galling that you have politicised renewable energy." And he repeated himself 3 times. 3 times he used that word galling. I'm not sure if he had to get a dictionary beforehand and find a word that suited the situation, but he was angry. He was angry that we had travelled so far to go down there and make all these people who think that renewable energy is fantastic look like a bunch of geese. Because it's a joke what's going on. It's a giant scam. And to think that he represents a senator who sits inside a building that gets paid for by us, and that they are galled by the fact that you want to protect your home and your community and your backyard, well, I find that disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. These people are paid big wages, and they are paid those wages by us because we have worked hard. Our children work hard, our parents have worked hard, our grandparents have worked hard. And now they take our money and sit in a big building and tell us they're galled that we're trying to protect our yards. I said, so what do you expect us to do then? And then he went on a massive rant about, did I understand the injuries that people living in coal communities and gas communities are suffering because of people like me pushing mainstream energy sources being used. But just further to that, the other thing is we've copped a lot of flack. People think that we're here being paid for by the coal and the gas companies to come around and do this. I'll get my credit card statement out and show you. We pay for all of our own plane flights. We pay for all of this stuff. We've got a screen in the car. I've got a projector. Everywhere I have been, it has come out of my own back pocket. You can ask my kids because they're whinging all the time they don't get a holiday anymore because all mum's money's being spent on doing this sort of stuff. I went to work at 4:30 this morning and flipped burgers until just before I came here. I work 7 days a week. But this stuff has to be done so that people like you and I can come together and we can amalgamate and we can spread this message further and further. Because after this meeting, you need to go home and you need to think about 5 or 10 people that you know down in the city or somewhere else in this area who doesn't know about this, and you need to go and tell them what's going on. And you need to make sure they vote correctly at the upcoming state election and the upcoming federal election. Because I know who I'm going to be voting for in the state election, and it's not the current Nanango person, because we haven't had much help from her at all. Neither from the Gympie person, who most of you would be in his electorate, I believe. This is Gympie, isn't it? Yeah. So let me tell you exactly what's going on at Kilkivan so you understand, because some of you might not know the exact details of the plan out there. So if you take what's happening here and then you take what's happening to us and you think about all these pieces, it's like a giant puzzle that stretches the entire way from the top of Australia down to the bottom. And when you hear Jim speak shortly, you'll connect the dots and you'll walk away from here today going, oh, we're fucked. Yep. It's true. I had no idea. I had my head far up my ass up until December of 2022. I just thought the world was peachy, didn't I? Well, I don't think that anymore. I am absolutely scared shitless for my children's future at the moment. If I wasn't, I would not be here right now. I would much rather be at home having a cup of tea. So, some images there of Kilkivan. I'm pretty sure you all know what we're famous for, that big statue of the horse in the main street. The horse ride each year. So I'm pretty sure everybody here is going to know geographically where we sit, but you all know where Barumba Dam is right now? Yep. So you've got Barumba here, here's Gympie, and here's Kilkivan. Those big solar panels, they sit out a bit further out here, and that's where that substation is that we all refer to as the Waluga substation. So Barumba is where they want to put a $14 billion pumped hydro project in. Yeah. That's a whole other rabbit hole that would take 2 hours to explain. It's actually a joke. It's laughable. But they want to get the electricity that they generate from that pumped hydro project over here to that substation at Waluga. Now, they've got a whole heap of easements that already run through there with power lines on them. But they decided they'd stretch it another near 40 kilometres longer and they'd bring it across here, up through Mananbar, all the way down this western edge of the Black Snake Range, across the back of Kilkivan and then up here. Sort of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why would they do that? This is a complete greenfield area. There's no HV lines, there's nothing. If anybody here's driven up through Mananbar, it's a land grab, isn't it? Right? So they can get parts of everybody's property by using the Acquisition of Land Act. Why wouldn't you go the cheaper version and run it straight up here, where you've already got an easement? So the issue we face at the moment is that we're trying to stop this power line. But as you all know, if you want to stop an issue of some sort, you've got to get to the foundation problem. And our foundational problem is this giant thing down here, this pumped hydro. So just to show that it does help that we have these meetings and that we all get together and we keep kicking up a stink, I'm not sure if you all heard, but on Friday, Twiggy Forrest pulled out of, you've heard about it? Yep. Up at Chulumban, he's pulled out of that big wind turbine complex. That is the best news ever. And that goes to show that this works. Taking a blowtorch to the toes of bureaucrats, rich elites and politicians, it works. They do not like being uncomfortable. The fact is, you're never going to remove them. We're not going to get rid of them. We're stuck living the way we are for now. So let's make it hard for them. Because once it's hard, they don't like that. So they just switch off whatever's going on. The other one was down at Allara. Jim and I went and spoke down there about a month or so ago now. There was a big international company coming in offering huge dollars to people for turbines in Allara. Massive meeting. Building the same size as this, there was people out on the grass. The whole district turned up. This week in the Australian Rural News, I think it's called, there was an announcement. The company actually came out and said they have pulled out of any further talks with the landowners because of the pressure placed on them by the locals. So never forget that. Never forget it. When they go back to their boardrooms and they go, holy shit, we've got 500 angry people and they've all got weapons licenses. Yeah, they're going to pull out. So keep your foot on the accelerator. It's very important. So that's how Barumba looks right now. I'm pretty sure you've all seen it. They're going to build another big wall down the bottom here, lift it right up, and they're going to drown all this up here up to Yabba Creek. Don't worry about the fact that there's United Nations listed endangered species up there everywhere. Right up in the end up here, there's fig trees, probably 1/3 the size of this room. The water's just going to go straight over the top of them. But apparently that doesn't matter. Yeah, there are no greenies. Where were the greenies when they bulldozed all the trees where that solar farm is or that solar complex is at Kilkivan? So I'm just going to skip through this. This was specifically made for another group, but you guys are local, so you know most of this stuff already. The big pitch that I've been putting to everybody, and if you watch that ADH TV episode, you'll see I really get stuck into the fact that Tanya Plibersek is meant to protect the environment. And I know, it's a joke, isn't it? And we have just got species after species after species of plants and animal up there. Those power lines will just wipe them out. And if Barumba goes ahead, it'll wipe out even more. So it needs to be stopped. You guys already see plenty of wedge-tailed eagles, so you don't need to see those. But what I do want to show you is an aerial view of, here we go. So this is the Wide Bay Highway. This is the one that you all pass when you drive out to Killy. There's the Wide Bay. So that's west out that way. Now, when this went in, I drove past it every day for the week that they bulldozed all the trees. Massive gum trees. Just bulldozed a lot. They didn't even have the respect for the timber to ask somebody to come in and use it, take it for firewood even. They burnt the lot. They pushed it up into a massive pile, threw accelerant on it, and up it went. It was gone in a matter of a day. And I imagine that's because they didn't want people seeing what they were doing. But there was not a greenie there anywhere. So if you don't already know, there's another half to it. So this is the bit over on the Widgie Road. It's not going to play for me today. Must be this rain up here at Curra, hey? So this is the back road going, well, it starts over there and it comes down this way. That's the back road into Widgie. You'll see the other half over there on the Wide Bay Highway. This entire complex is now owned by BJEI, the Beijing Energy Incorporated company. So where's Beijing located? China. They bought it in December last year. There's another 3,500 acres of land's been secured between both of those. I can tell you all about it because one of the girls that works at my shop lives in the house right there. And her mum and dad were bought out by this company. One good bit of news I have from them, but, is that they've just increased their, I think they're paying $1 a month to stay in the house until they bulldoze it. Beautiful, big brick home. Let's talk about the housing issue in Australia. And they're about to put bulldozers through a whole heap of perfectly good houses. They've let them stay on for 6 more months. So I'm hoping that Peter Dutton coming out and giving his energy policy that relates to putting modular nuclear reactors into places like Toronto has put the brake on some of these projects by these overseas companies. You can only hope that that's what it is. I mean, it seems realistic to me because if this Chinese company thought they were in the money and there's a whole heap of subsidies to be gained, they'd be pushing them out right now, wouldn't they? And the bulldozers would be in there tomorrow. But I have a little feeling it's going to be a bit like what happened in at Traviston Dam. and those people are going to buy their houses back for far less than what they sold them for, which is good for them, I guess. But so my concern with these properties is that these companies flew under the radar of the Foreign Investment Review Board because it was less than $20 million per purchase. So, I mean, we're talking about China. I don't need to tell you all about China and the CCP, but you get them buying up one after the other after the other after the other of these properties, and we know that they are. I can't speak about it openly, but there's several other properties throughout the district there that have been purchased by a Chinese company. What's stopping them in a few years' time from pulling the fences out, pulling the panels out? They've now got the biggest beef farm in all of southeast Queensland. And that should scare everybody. And that, along with what's going on here, because this is all connected, it's all interconnected, is a good reason that we all need to stand up and fight. For food security, for electrical security, for national security. Because those things are being weakened right now. So what we did up there was we kicked off this group called Kilkivan Action Group. And I'm not sure if you guys are going to get an actual specific community group going here that's responding to forest winds. It may help join in with Des and what he's done so far and just get a little action group together. But what we did was we kicked off with the Hollywood core flutes. So we just bought core flutes, we put them all over the highway. And then, this is where it gets interesting. For any of you who think you can trust the Queensland government, I'll tell you a little story. Why are you laughing? This wasn't meant to be funny. So we stuck these signs up everywhere, and as you can see, we've put their name smack bang at the top, Powerlink, Queensland government-owned corporation. So last year, we noticed that the signs were being pulled down one day, like they were all missing. Comes to the next morning, and then a couple of the ladies in our group came in and were like, the signs are being pulled down. There's a Gympie Regional Council crew going around and pulling our signs out of the trees. But the thing was, they're pulling our sign down, but they're leaving the septic cleaner and the four-wheel drive spare parts guy and the electrician. All those other core flutes are still there. So I'd done my research. I knew that under the Traffic Infrastructure Act, we were okay to have our core flutes up. They weren't obscene, they weren't offensive. They weren't trying to replicate a street sign or a traffic sign. There was no issues with them. So we find out that the council was directed by Queensland Transport to go along the Wide Bay Highway and remove every single sign from this bloody group that had the word Powerlink in it. So along they went. They left the big high ones up because they didn't have the JSC or whatever, the safety thing. They couldn't climb that high, so the big high ones got left in place. And after a couple of days, it came about that the guy from the Southern Region Road Corridor Safety section of Queensland Transport, pretty important bloke apparently, tracked him down, he tracked me down, we had a talk. And this is the bit that upsets me because this is how bureaucrats speak to us, the people. He was just going to treat me like I was some dumb blonde. Oh, Katie, oh, yeah, I'm so glad to get a hold of you. Look, there's just been a little misunderstanding, you know, and look, we had to take your signs down because, you know, we've got to look after our trees. And you just nailed them into the trees. And I thought, right, well, we've got a little bit of an argument on our hands here. I said, oh, that's no good, mate. And he goes, yeah, so, you know, we've just taken them down. I said, so why didn't you take down all the other signs on the same trees? Like the septic tank cleaner and the electrician and the four-wheel drive spare parts guy. Oh, he didn't know what to say. And then I said to him, well, the thing is, mate, I was a cop for 16 and a half years and I went through the Traffic Infrastructure Act from front to back. I can't see where you're allowed to enforce this and seize our signs. And if you have, mate, I said, where's your enforcement paperwork? What are you charging us with? What's the fine? Oh, right, yeah, okay, Katie. Changed his tune like that. Yeah, right, okay. Well, we might just try and get them all back to you, hey? All those signs were returned. So we made, it was in the Courier Mail. You can Google this. It's in the public arena to read. We threatened them that we were going to have the Gympie Regional Council, everybody involved, Queensland Transport, we were going to make formal complaints of stealing and trespassing because they walked into people's private yards and they stole the star pickets. No one comes between a farmer and his star pickets. Not with the price of steel where it is at the moment. They took the lot. So chucked it all in a truck, brought it straight back out and dropped it in Kilkivan. So tell people that story. I've got a letter of apology from him, a formal letter where he said, sorry, they made a mistake. I find that abhorrent, that is how they treat us. Absolutely abhorrent. So if you're going to get core flutes and you want to put them up around the place, just check into the rules and regulations of where you want to put them. Make sure you're not putting them on people's private property. But you guys really need to start hammering the message home. Use the word forest wind. Do what AusNet guys have done down south. What's that mountain say? Piss off AusNet. Have you all seen that? Yep. They slashed the words piss off AusNet into the side of a huge field. And she keeps it up going all the time, doesn't she? Like, she slashes it constantly. It's brilliant. So just so you understand, with this whole renewable energy thing, there's two issues that we face. We've got private companies, and they're the people that are going behind all of our backs, and they're approaching all of our neighbours. You might not even know that your neighbours sold out. I've had to tell a few people now who didn't believe me at all to start off with, and this is their tactics. This is how they divide and conquer communities, because they fracture us and they cause angst between us all. They go in and they offer big money to people to sell up, and they make them sign confidentiality clauses. So one person in particular I know, he didn't even know until I told him that his neighbours had sold out. And he's going to have this stuff coming straight past his window. And there's not much he can do as an individual about it right now. So we're going to get a new series of signs done up, something similar to this, and we're going to get them throughout the region as well. We'll have a big working bee, and hopefully I can connect with Des and everybody else that's been involved with setting up today to get you all on board as well to get some of these signs out here. Because we need to start to advertise to our community members that we all need to stick together. Because if we don't stick together, they're just going to walk right over the top of us. So throughout this process, I learnt some other stuff, and a lot of you probably already know this. Back in 2022, the Queensland Government developed a draft Wide Bay Burnett Regional Plan. And in that plan, it's available online, you can go to the Queensland Government website and have a look at it. It stated that they had had extensive community consultation with everybody from as far away as Bundaberg down to Noosa and all the way at the back to South Burnett and North Burnett councils. The funny thing is I'm yet to find anybody that was consulted. Did you guys have a consultation here in this hall or anywhere around here in the last 2 years by the Queensland Government telling you about this plan? Right. So in 2022, when the plan was still available online, it also came with an interactive tool, and you could click on that tool and you could see, and this all connects into this whole jigsaw puzzle of renewable energy and all the stuff that Jim's going to tell you about shortly. That tool, you could scroll in, zoom right in down to your fence line, and it shows your title plan, your lot plan, your RP, everything. You could see what the government has planned for your backyard. And I still have some copies of the old report. So I've printed the wind investigation area map up for you, and have a look at all these before you go. I've put the same one up around a few places. Couple of things of note. So just bear in mind, this is the Queensland Government's intentions for our region, for the Wide Bay Burnett. This is what they want. It's a really lovely big flowery report from Stephen Miles talking about how he pretty much wants to use this area as the battery pack for the net zero carbon free Queensland economy. It's going to power Queensland using our backyards. So all this blue, this is all wind investigation area. So that's area that has been earmarked by the Queensland Government. They've told people, probably overseas companies, come on in, go and speak to all these people, offer them big money, buy it up. That's where you can put turbines. But even scarier than that are these yellow dots. They're called priority living areas. Does anybody here know about the priority living areas? Some people call them 15-minute cities, all that sort of thing. It's not a city, of course, but it's very similar. What one guy said over here, this gentleman in the Dryserbone coat, he said, my town's not even on here. No, it's not. Neither is Widgie, neither is Waluga, neither is Blacksnake, neither is Tansy. Have a look at them afterwards. The majority of the towns in our region, Bickenden's missing, they're not even on there as a priority. Obviously, they'll still be a town, some sort of a ghost town eventually, I guess. Tourists might come to look at the spider webs growing off the fronts of all the old shops. But their priority, like just get that in your head for a second, their priority is for those areas. So that tells you a lot, doesn't it? Our hospitals are stuffed, our roads are stuffed. Actually, everything's stuffed, nearly, isn't it? So if they've got no interest whatsoever in making any of the other towns' priorities, I mean, for us, where we come from, because Jim's out Mergen Way and I'm up on Blacksnake, what's left for us? What are we paying tax for when we're not going to be a priority anymore? Will it get to the point where you can't even call for a police car or an ambulance to come because you're not living in a PLA? They're called PLAs. It's quite shocking to me. I did geography at university, and back then there was like a list of internationally recognised terms for maps. There was no priority living area listed on there. It was hamlets, villages, towns, townships, cities, metropolises, megalopolises. I never remember seeing priority living area. But apparently the Queensland government's rewritten the rules for international geographical definitions. So that's all the councils that the plan covers. You should jump online and have a look. It's now been mandated. So as of December last year, the Queensland government has formalised that draft plan and they're now going to enact it all. So that's a tiny bit scary. So that's why we all need to fight. And that's why we need to hang over our back fences and talk to our neighbours and talk to our kids and get them to join the fight. Because I'm not giving up my backyard. I don't know how you guys all feel, but they won't be getting my backyard. So I'm just going to click through this again, guys. These are just images that are on this PowerPoint from things that Jim and I have done. And I might see if we've got some internet up so I can play you this last clip before Jim jumps up. Just back to that wide baby net plan, sorry. On the actual plan that came out in December, they've removed that map. So you know what I was saying before about do you trust the government? All the other maps are in there because like the concept of the plan is that it tells you where they're going to build hospitals, where they're going to put in agroforestry, how they're going to look after farming areas, all the rest. So it's I guess at the heart of it, they're trying to do the right thing. But why would they put all the maps from the draft into the new plan and leave the wind one off? Might have something to do with the fact that there was a lot of noise, wasn't there, Jim? Like we were going around to dozens of meetings leading up to that, and there was a lot of pissed off people about that map. But it just disappeared in the plan. So everywhere Jim and I go, we tell everybody these few things. Public awareness is so important. I think that people in the main street of Gympie see me coming now when I go in to get stuff at shops and they go, oh, Jesus, it's that woman from Kilkivan again. I had to get some flowers for somebody the other day and I gave a 5-minute lecture to the lady at the florist. I'm like, you need to worry about this. And at the end of it, of course, she was like, oh my God, I had no idea. But this is the thing, you start telling people this stuff, they have no idea what's going on. So spread the message, spread it to everybody. Billboard campaign. So we've been getting, Kilkivan Action Group's been asking people to donate money and we've been getting them to put it into the Property Rights Australia Fighting Fund. So we've had some really good donations, 7,500, 5,000, 3,000, 1,000, 1,000, 500, heaps of $50 amounts. It's amounted to quite a bit now. We're going to put billboards on the highway out here because it's about $4,000 a month to hire those big billboards leading up to this state election. I did have a really good suggestion recently. A bloke said to me, what about if we put some big power lines and we hang the Premier off the power lines with their bum over the flames of a bushfire underneath? Because let's not forget, these power lines cause bushfires And they want to stick it right up the guts of the Black Snake Range next to a giant national park that's full of tinder, ready to go. Hasn't been maintained in about 12 years. We'll just hang them off the power lines. Oh, here's the most important one. Contact your politicians. I know that most of us don't like them, but the fact is that they are a conduit for us into the system that we all currently live under. Whether we like it or not, they are the people who we need to get our message to. Local, state and federal. You know how you guys have got these wind turbines here, and at the moment it's sitting with Tanya Plibersek, and at some point soon it's going to be open for submissions. Have I got that right, Des? Don't worry about waiting until it's open for submissions. Everybody go home tonight and write a really well-worded letter. And the reason I say that is because I've spoken to so many people who've just gone for gold and said what they think. You've just got to tone it down a bit. That's like I have to. Jim says to me all the time, Katie, just be careful what you say today. Just tone it down, because they won't listen to it if you tell them what you really think. A really well-worded letter on paper, put it in the mailbox via registered post so it lands on Tanya Plibersek's desk next week. Because if she gets a heap of mail that she has to deal with, because don't forget that every time they pick up registered post, they've got to sign for it. And that means they've got to enter it into their correspondence register. That's how it works down there. They've got to act on it then. So imagine if she opens up her correspondence register and she sees there's 1,000 letters about the Forest Winds turbine complex. What's she going to do? She's going to go, get rid of that shit. How do we get rid of it? It's a headache. Why do you think she's done what she did with Challambin up north? Twiggy Forrest pulled out because he was told by the Environment Department that it looked like he wasn't going to get his approval. So hammer the politicians as best you can and demand from the federal representatives that you contact that we have a federal Senate inquiry. So I think it's 6 times, Jim, you tell me it's 6 times. Oh, we're up to 8 times now. So if you don't know how it works, we've got a Senate and a House down in Canberra, of course. We've got senators like Malcolm Roberts, he's a good fella, and yeah, he's excellent. Jared Rennick, all those guys, Matt Canavan, Ralph Babbitt, he's another good one. Then you've got your House. So they've passed, we want them to pass a proposal for an inquiry in the Senate into the rollout of HV lines and all this renewable energy. So every time they put this to the Senate for a vote, it gets voted down by the Greens. And let's not forget that the proposal is about looking after the environment and getting the truth about what's going on onto the table for all Australians. So the Greens, the Teals, the Independents, Mr Pocock, who I spoke about before, and all of the Labor Party have voted every single attempt by all of the opposition in the Senate to get the inquiry up. So I sent a letter to every single senator, not just to our Queensland senators. I sent one to every senator. If you've got the time, do it yourself. Do it. Send them a letter. You can just easily, I think there's 170 something. Is there 170 something senators? 78. 178 or 78? Right. You can find it. It's on one page on the Australian Parliament House website. Write a letter, photocopy it, leave a blank in the 2-bit, fill it out and send it to every single one of them. We need that Senate inquiry, and we need a new federal government as well, if you didn't already work that out, but I'm pretty sure you all know that. So we're thinking, after we met with everybody down in Canberra, so when Jim and I went to Canberra, we got to have meetings with quite a few politicians down in the bowels, and they seemed to all be getting ready for an election, and that was in February. So we sort of think that maybe there's going to be a federal election. We have been told unequivocally by many people in the coalition, from very high up down to our member here, Lou O'Brien, that if they get in, they will pull the funding for Barumba and Youngla. Now, yeah, that is a good outcome. And I understand that this is about politics and that not all of us believe the same things about certain politicians, and don't get me started on what I think about most of them, because then I will get locked up. But the thing is, if we could get the coalition into power federally and they can pull the money on these 2 big pumped hydros, when you hear Jim talk and you connect the dots as to why these hydros are so important to the entire system in Australia. If they fall over, the whole lot's going to go over like dominoes, including your wind turbines. So just bear that in mind. This is just a small clip of the rally in Canberra.
Let's talk briefly about the small, beautiful, idyllic village of Rye Park. Southern Tablelands, New South Wales, a beautiful place known for its wool and meat. You know, Big Wind came to town with their greasers. They promised prosperity. They promised economic growth. In the first 3 weeks of this project, the big trucks rolled up their tiny main street. Pictures fell from house walls and tiles came out of their friggin' bathrooms from the vibration.
Disgusting.
These residents have to put doonas on their friggin' windows and pillows under their doors just to get some bloody sleep.
Yeah. Shame.
But you know, they wake up each morning now and instead of staring out a beautiful scenic rural vista, it's an industrial pincushion. 360. The town is totally surrounded by wind turbines. But you know, they did get a new footpath up the main street.
Now, there's a couple of blokes back here in this big building called Blackout Bowen and Airbus Elbow. And there's another couple of blokes up in Queensland called Stephen Miles and Mick DeBrenny. And those four fellas, well, they didn't even bother to ask the people, the plants or the animals where I come from, whether they've got the economic, the environmental or the social licence to roll the reckless renewables out over our homes. So I'm here with the message for DeBrenny and for Miles and Blackout and Airbus. No deal. No deal. Pack up your bulldozers and your drilling rigs and take them away, because up in Kilkivan our gates are locked. You are not welcome on our land. Our gates are locked. You are not welcome. Thank you for everybody being here today. It is bloody brilliant to see you all here. Let's do it again.
I have to say I loved every second of that. It was the most exciting thing ever. And if I hadn't have had my man of reason with me there, dead set I would have said some bad stuff. But we spoke for much longer. That's just a little bit that ADH TV took and put that clip together. It's on YouTube. But you see Lou O'Brien was standing there with us. We had the who's who of everybody from the centre to the far right of politics there that day. He has been a massive supporter of this. For us in Kilkivan, and look, I understand he's ex-QPS like me, and he and I get along really well. I cannot say enough good stuff about that guy. He has been so helpful to me so far. He's connected me with so many people to help Kilkivan Action Group. And he sent his apologies for today. He did want to come, but he couldn't get here. So just to let you know, that's just a little bit of inside information about that particular politician, because you are going to be voting in a federal election soon. And I'm not sure who his competition is, but for me, I've got no qualms whatsoever that I'll put my hand up and vote for him again federally, not at a state level. I would be voting for the LNP. That's it from me. Jim's up next, but we're going to have a break first, hey? Did anybody have any questions? BJEI, it stands for Beijing Energy Incorporated. And they now own, just remember this everybody, let this stick in your head, they now own that entire solar complex. The majority of these things they're buying, it's all confidential. So unless you speak to somebody who is breaking their confidentiality agreement that they've been paid a lot of money to shut up about, it's very hard to find out. Yeah. Look, they did it in the Lockyer Valley years ago where I come from. They bought up all the family farms. They're all owned by China now. Yep. They're sitting in the RSL at Caloundra. That's just a guess. If anybody else has got suggestions, I think that's where they're all sitting. So if you're on Facebook, you want to check out Bigot in Action Group, the Wide Bay... what is it? Thank you. Wide Bay Residents Against Wind Farms, Kilkivan Action Group. Oh, it's on the fly, yeah. Check out all the Facebook pages. Talk to your next door neighbour and ask if they are, and go over and have a coffee every day. That's everything. It's time for a cuppa.